Sure.
Lucas?
So I think I was the seconder to the motion to approve the minutes, but I had a request for those participating virtually. Since we have ongoing participation from city housing department staff, if we could include under roll call, item 2, staff members, that Wayne Chen has participated in every meeting, and I think will continue to do so. If he could be listed in future minutes or agendas.
As a staff member.
Right.
Not as a committee member. I think you might have to repeat the question.
Can you hear us, Phil?
Yeah, I think I heard half of that. Yeah.
So
yeah,
if-
you do.
I can repeat.
Okay,
Lucas was
thanks.
wondering if we could add Wayne Chen to our list of staff members on the agendas.
Yeah, I'm trying to write, I can pull it up and remind myself what our proposed revisions to the bylaws were, because I didn't know if we were creating a full staff position or not
No, I don't.
for city staff, but let me double check.
I think we called it, we didn't name Wayne just in case Wayne wanted to send someone else. We called it
Housing department.
housing department, I think, right?
Okay.
So maybe we add housing department representative, and then in the minutes, we would reflect Wayne is here today. Something like that. That's fine.
Yeah, let me just pull up the bylaws to remind myself how we characterized it, because I know we made revisions to it. Yeah, I think it would be appropriate to list them as, which member of city staff was there during that time.
Exactly.
So
That makes
that we can
sense.
make that change moving forward.
Thank you.
When we move to approve the bylaws, do you want?
Or we
that
can,
additional
if we want to add it to these minutes as
Yeah,
well.
that's what-
then just do the verbal change and then approve them as amended.
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
So I amend my motion to add Wayne Chen as the housing department member, whatever the, from the city, whatever the appropriate designation is number E under staff members, under 1B2.
Thank you. So, yeah. I
So
think I
you
was second, right?
you
Yeah.
second, yeah. And then we have to vote, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
The approval of the minutes from November 14th passes unanimously. We did not receive any public comments. Informational items is up next. So hopefully this evening will be pretty quick. It's to go over the lease contract. So from my understanding, the lease document is fairly standard, but Derek is happy to kind of quickly walk us through it. Quickly. I can respect that. Derek, are you able to?
Sorry, guys. Can you all hear me first?
We
I got all my monitors. I'm just clicking mutes, unmutes, making sure you can all hear me. So I'm going to share. I think Sammy's actually going to help us walk through the lease as well. So we'll be here kind of tag teaming. Would you like me to share my screen as we kind of walk through that help?
Sure.
Okay.
We need that pet
It
addendum.
looks like I had a request, so whatever. I might
Oh,
be
you
you
got
after everything. Okay.
We have an opening assisting from somewhere.
Okay, it looks like it's working. I'm opening it up right now. Can you see that, Sammy? Do you see it?
Yeah, I'm gonna cut my camera off while we do this because I'm gonna have to get close to the screen and you don't need a close up of my forehead. All right. So this lease package is actually compiled of like several different packets within one packet, right? So the first packet itself is actual lease contract. So that's why you'll see at the bottom it says page 1 of 13. So going through just the lease contract, the first page is really where like the meat and potatoes of this part of the lease is at. It has the lease term, and then also lets the resident know how much their security deposit is. It also has the residents' names, and then any authorized occupants are also going to be on the first page. And then moving on to the second page.
Do you
here.
want to take questions as we go through it, or?
Do we have a,
Yes, we have a question.
Sorry, I went
Okay.
through it in detail and just there were certain things that I wanted to know, like what numbers are gonna get filled in there. I'm assuming, obviously this is a template contract, by the NAA, and I assume we'll have standard periods for these things, like, so, like in number 2, the length of time that guests can stay.
okay, I see. No one may occupy the dwelling, right? So we kind of talked about that openly. So we have like a standard, right, where no one can stay longer than 14 consecutive days, and that's like our WIN standard.
Yeah.
But we did talk about this with the school district to maybe, expand on that. Also, it's really just there for protection, right? So that someone can't move in an unauthorized occupant. So if someone has somebody coming from like out of country to stay with them for a while, like a family member or something, they could just communicate that with the office, and then that's, kind of like case by case.
Right.
But this really is here, like I said, more so for protection.
Right, understood. We had just talked about 14 days, and I just want to make sure that a 3 wasn't slipped in there, for example, so. And then,
Oh, sure.
and then in
Understood.
number 3, there's a standard termination notice about number of days. Is there a standard amount of days that you give people?
So yes, 30 days.
30, okay, thank you, that's it for that page.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so can we scoot over to page 2, Derek? Thank you. And
Okay.
then, so this is where we're gonna have our rental charges, and then also any type of utility, right? So utilities that are paid for by the owner would be checked here. So then anything that is unchecked is residents' responsibility. Also goes on to discuss the insurance requirements for rental insurance. So it looks like we are going to require rental insurance for this property, which is great. And then we would put in the coverage amount would be $100,000 liability, which is the standard amount.
So on 6, for the rent charge, the rent, I'm just wondering how many days grace period is it before rent is late?
5 days is the standard.
5 days, okay, and then in the utilities, I know that Derek went over this before, but can you remind us which utilities come with and which ones don't?
So the residents are responsible for all of their utilities.
All of these? Water, gas, electricity, master, wastewater, trash, cable, those boxes will all be checked? And number 7?
They will all be left unchecked.
And there's a utility
Oh, okay.
addendum that kind of coincides with this further down the lease package.
Okay,
That specifies, and Sammy can clarify, that specifies the various utilities, how the calculations are calculated, how the amounts, et cetera. So, and it lists out separately each possible utility and how that calculation is done.
thank you, just trying to
And
understand.
that's
what they
further
are.
down, but yeah.
Yep. So then last part of, no, sorry, go ahead.
You ready for page 3? Okay.
Thank you. Before we move on to special provisions, the last section is just going over payment for if we have to rekey the unit. So typically there's a charge for that, but the residents also allowed to call out a locksmith if there's an emergency.
Correct.
So then moving on to special provisions. I'll just pull it up on mine because it's getting kind of hard to read with the bold.
With the watermark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have it up, so let me just get to this page real quick.
Okay.
Page 3.
Yeah, it's not letting me blow up the picture. Like
No, it's okay. I got it.
Hey,
Okay, so
Sammy, this is, I want to let everyone know as you're walking through this. This was set up as a PDF we actually asked you guys to turn it into a Word document so we could redline it. And then we went to the joy of turning that Word document back into a PDF. So the formatting's a little funky, just so everyone knows, like that watermark never really amount of work. So this is really for everyone's just edification. Understand that it's really not gonna look this bad when it's finalizing it, but this language is 100% the terms that we did some redlining and had some comments on. So I just want everyone to know that. That's why this kind of looks funny. You're probably having some issues with it, Sandy, that's all.
No problem at all, and my eyes are not the best. So that doesn't help. So this is just kind of going over like basic procedures for move outs. So if the resident moves out early, we have this outlined further in the lease, you know, what the cost is for breaking their lease early. And then if they're charged for any damages or anything like that accrues on their account, what we expect and when we expect to receive that money, and then what the procedure is for any property that's left in the unit after move-out.
On number 10, the special provisions, is there anything standard that you anticipate would get dropped in there, or would that just be a case-by-case thing, like if you need, you know, for accessibility for wheelchairs or something like that? I know there's a separate addendum for that, but.
I mean, Sam, you can, I mean, typically all the I'll quote other addendums outside of the specific 13-page rental agreement are included after, within this package, but after. I don't know, is anything ever typically added there on the special section, number 10, Sammy?
No, and no, there isn't.
So to kind of answer the question, nothing will essentially be filled in there in that section, but again, there are additional addendums that follow this actual lease 13-page package.
Thank you.
Kind of separately outside of this 13-page lease, so,
Right.
which those will be through this presentation as well. So.
All right, and then to the left of this page, it's continued from page 3. What happens if property is left over in the unit after move out, and then a brief on rent increases. Lease contract changes, and delay of occupancy. So if the resident doesn't move in when they're supposed to, or move out when they're supposed to, and delay occupancy. So just a brief overview on that. And then next page, 5. All right.
And if real quick, like, just to call out to, obviously, if you guys, I know you had this a little bit of time ahead of time, but it's a lot of information. So if you have any questions, it seems like you do so far, but if there's anything as we flip to a page, feel free to call them out, or if there's anything specific that you need clarification on, let us know.
Thank you.
Of course. So the next, what's in 19, kind of moving on down here, this is gonna go through.
Yeah, community policies and rules, sorry.
No, you're good. And I'm scrolling through, I'm just gonna kind of scroll through to help, Sammy too with the flow. So this is the next handful of pages are related specifically to the community rules, policies, procedures, of the community.
Yeah, so essentially, if you can go to the next page now, page 6, it has some general rules that apply to living on property that are not within the addendums. So parking is regulated within this portion of the lease. There's also restrictions against medical marijuana, and then also like cultivating or manufacturing drugs, obviously not allowed. So then moving on to parking, so then our standard for vehicles in the condition that they must be in, and then property loss, and then the smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, we furnish and maintain them. So if you can scoot down. Let's see what we have here. Condition of the property and, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna help you. No, you're good. That's
Condition of the property, and then alteration. So just stating, obviously, we expect for the unit to remain in the condition that we gave gave it to the resident upon return. And then scoot down if you can.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll highlight here, you know, if you read this, it's, again, a legal document, it's very specific. I always say, kind of just general, and over all the years I've done this, we want them to feel at home. It's their place of home. Decorate it, do it to wish. You can hang pictures, things like that. The best way to phrase it is what Sammy said. Just whenever you do move out, you know, we expect and hope for it to be the way it was when you moved in, just to keep it in the same condition. And if they painted their walls or did something excessive outside of what's essentially allowed, if upon move out, any cost, hourly labor, material, supplies, et cetera, to get the unit back to its original condition would then be billed as part of the move out process when they move. So it kind of goes over all that on here.
Can I backtrack
Quick
to a
question.
point? Really quick question.
Yes.
Backtracking to 23, release of resident. Sorry, I'm just noticing it says voluntary or involuntary job transfer. I just was thinking that should be on our radar, just given if someone does live in the housing and they leave the school district, should that be considered for a lease termination? If I, just signed a lease at Mountain View, I was like, great, low income housing, and then quit my job, should there be a follow through? Because it says here there couldn't be lease termination if someone chooses to job transfer.
I thought that was addressed in a different addendum.
So I see what you're saying. This is referring more so to like someone wants to break their lease with no penalties because they had a job transfer.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I just wanted to
And
double
so they
check.
wouldn't be allowed to do that, unless we approved it in writing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and legally stating this is a legal binding contract. Military clause, and there's one other, domestic, I think is the other. Those are essentially the two, right, Sammy? If correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the two ways you can legally get out of your lease, regardless, with proper proof and et cetera. However, like Sammy said, depending on, and this is a very unique property as well, that conversations can be had with the office staff and then raised up to Sammy and or myself should something come up. But this exactly is basically stating that essentially you're not let out of your lease or any obligation for any monies, costs, et cetera, for the length of your term, for some of those reasons as examples. So, but military, obviously, if you got military orders and you've got to serve somewhere, that is one of the two ways you are, regardless of situation, let out of your lease. So
Yes, that's right.
Sorry.
So can you go back
Another
to
question.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yes.
My apologies. I feel dense, so it might, you might have to walk me through this. So one of the factors that we're contending with is there's a grace period provided for someone who is leaving the school district, right? Because we don't want to necessarily burden them with having to find housing immediately. But we're balancing that with the need or anticipation that there may be, for instance, a new teacher or a staff member who needs a unit pretty quickly. I want to make sure I understand. But so if an occupant, let's say a teacher who is leaving the school district for another job, is doing so, they can't get out of the lease.
So there's an addendum at the end that talks about their employment at the district. And my understanding is this section is if let's say their partner gets a job transfer, their partner's job transfer doesn't entitle them to break their lease.
Right. But you could break the lease. So you don't have to take advantage of that 1 year grace period, right? You could break the lease and leave sooner if the occupant who is an employee with the district transfers out of the district.
Well, at least the way I read it, you're basically locked in for the first year, and then it goes to month by month. And then I think it was a 90-day notice to terminate. So you'd probably be on the hook for 90 days of rent, unless they talked to the office and there was a grace period given. Is that consistent with what you understand?
I'll kind of add in, and this is something we can discuss, and it's typically by client. And it was earlier on the lease, I can't remember which page, but it discusses lease break.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, some of our properties have a lease break plan. So you sign a 12-month lease, you move in today, 3 months in, job transfer, something happens, you move across the country, right? So you obviously aren't going to be living there. There's kind of two scenarios as far as financial and responsibility to the unit and what the length of your term is out. One is a lease break option, which is something that can't be discussed. Typically, it's a 30-day notice, always, regardless. You're responsible for 30 days. Even if today something happened the other week tomorrow, no matter what agreement was set in place, there's a 30-day requirement, just as we give notice to as well. 30 days notice plus 1 or 2 months rent. Those are some of the scenarios. Again, client and property specific, very different up and down the state. That's like a lease break option. That's typically something that can be discussed. Another is they have another choice to say, basically, I'll pay my rent until it's re-rented, because by law we can't accept rent double for one unit. So if I took that job across the country, I just paid my December's rent, so I'm paid in full through December 31st. I move tomorrow. Connie and team rents the unit. Someone moves in on December 20th. I would then be prorated back the remaining days of the month from that first day of moving. So those are a couple scenarios where if there is a situation like that, where they can be let out of their lease. But again, there is typically some fee and cost involved with breaking the lease term. So
I'm feeling like a lease break consideration for, in this case, makes sense because the district's interest is in housing your employees, right? So you don't, and there may be a heightened sense of urgency because that the ability to occupy a unit quickly may be the difference maker in a prospective employee deciding to pursue employment with the district, right? Does that make sense?
I'm not quite following.
Okay.
The early move out is in 11, section 11, that it just talks about without consent. If you move without consent, you have to pay. I thought I saw somewhere that there was like a 90-day lock-in, but I may be. So you're saying we should allow them to, if they want to leave, if they move?
Well, based on what I think it was Derek who was saying that there may be ways of structuring lease break agreements that protect the district, and make sure you're still able to, meet your financial obligations, but also grant some flexibility to the person who is, or the household that is seeking to leave early, and also you have more and unusual factors than a typical or conventional apartment operator, right? You may actually want to help facilitate the release of a tenancy in order to expedite an occupancy of a prospective employee, right?
Well, I
Someone's
think
moving
you
across
always
the
have the ability to do that, right? You could always give consent and allow them to move, and it would be, especially if it's over the summer, I would think it would be to the district's benefit to do that.
Okay, it might be that I'm just not fully understanding this provision. It sounded like it was hard to break a lease. That was kind of my takeaway.
It just talks about consent. So, if something comes up, you go to the manager and you say, hey, I gotta go take care of my mom. She just had a stroke, or we have to move to Virginia, or whatever it is. I assume that probably the management is not gonna be super rigid in that kind of scenario. But I don't know, were you suggesting, Derek, that we could come up with a special lease break provision, or is it treated more case by case?
Well, we would have to, so essentially fair housing, we'd have to offer the same for any unit, whichever scenario, no matter what the scenario was, whether it was a job transfer for depending on the reason they'd have to break the lease, it would have to be an equal opportunity for everyone that lives there, right? So if we did a 30-day notice plus 1 month's rent and any concession received, that would be like an example. It's pretty standard. I know some clients we do a 30-day notice plus 2 months rent to break their lease. Sammy, what do we do for our TCG sites on a lease break? Is there a lease break early term option?
Yep, it's 30-day notice plus 1 month's rent, and it has to be paid up front.
So that's a very standard kind of overall the years across the board early term option. If there is one available, which obviously here I can see a property like this, we definitely probably want to have one in there. We could state that, I forgot what number, I think it was more of a generalized, but that can be tweaked and updated to state what our early term option lease break is, if it becomes an agreed to time frame and dollar amount. But typically, again, I would say a 30-day notice, written notice to the office letting them know that they're moving on X date. And then a 1 month's rent payment basically to break your lease. So. And again, so that would be an automatic, you can get out, right? No matter if you have 11 months left in your lease or 30 days, right? If you're towards the end, it's the last month, your 30-day notice is going to take you out the remainder of the lease. So that really benefits someone, I'd say, early on in the lease term with a lot of the months left, right? But if it's towards the end, obviously paying the 30 days notice and or waiting for someone to take possession is probably a better option. And that's something our office staff would kind of work and talk whomever, whatever resident and unit that was dealing with this situation. They can kind of walk and talk them through and see what scenario would be the best. But an early term break option is something we can specifically add if we come to, you know, a time frame and or number of months or dollar amount. That's something that can be done.
I don't know if I'm in favor of making it really easy for people to break their leases, because we prefer to have them on like the school year cycle. Because if we have a lot of vacant units in the middle of the year, it's going to be very difficult. I'm concerned it will be difficult for us to lease them.
Right.
And I don't know if we'd want to encourage a teacher to leave, to make it easy. It sounds bad, but to encourage them to leave mid-year.
Well, and for any reason, like what if their friend just broke up with their boyfriend and so now they're trying to sublease their really cheap apartment and so the person is just gonna cut out and move into I don't know, we do want to keep we want to keep the rent flowing because that services the ground lease, right?
So does the 30-day notice plus 1 month rent apply to tenants in their first year of the lease? Because after the first year, it goes month to month? And then
so if the lease is month to month, then there's no fee to break the lease. They can just give a 30-day notice. This would apply only if they're within a lease term.
Right.
But and to jump in, that's correct. So yeah, if they did an initial lease and on renewal, that's something we were considering. I didn't think we were here or want to offer month to month, because then you leave yourself, you have full exposure. Anyone can give notice and move at any given time. Now, if we find out 6 months, 7 months on the road, we've got a 300-person wait list between, school district employees and city employees and everyone on the waterfall there, then that's a different scenario, right? We do have properties that have 2+ year wait list of people. So, should we have a higher exposure, it's not as hard to reoccupy the units. But I believe that, what we'll do is we'll do an initial 12-month lease term, and then on the annual renewal or recertification period starts about 90 days out from the first year of lease ending, they would then sign another 12-month lease term.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't just go month to month. Okay.
If month to month was an option, again, let's just say they could do a month to month lease or a 12-month lease. Obviously, that completely benefits the resident and not the property. Then yes, they could give a 30-day notice at any given time. They're not locked into a term.
I don't know if month to month is a good idea.
I would definitely suggest not. If we do any kind of fluctuation on term offers, let's go, again, depending on, and there's so many variables, but we don't like to have any move outs or any exposure, typically October through January. Those are obviously slow months. And I know this is a very unique property and it's even probably a longer, so like you said, during the school season. But depending on the time when the initial lease term starts, say it starts in April, a 12-month lease would take until March 31st the following year. We do sometimes do 6 months or 8 months, 10-month leases. Those are, again, depending on property and client, those are some of the other options we do. 12-month is pretty standard. Usually it's like an 8 and 12 or 10 and 12-month lease term are some of the options that we'll have at some properties.
We don't need to decide that today, though.
No, I'll defer to all of you, but I was thinking, you will need some vacancies or some opportunity for prospective employees to have access to, right? Because that may be the difference between employment with the district and not.
Right.
Right. And so if it's really hard to, if for folks who really don't intend, they're not district employees or they're looking to leave the area, you don't necessarily want to lock them in at the expense of being able to hire that teacher or that staff person who would take the job if they could have their housing accommodations addressed. Right, so that's the, but I mean, ultimately, this is for the benefit of the district, so I'll defer to you on what makes more sense.
I think for the non-district employees, that second to last city addendum, which we'll get to, we let you guys get through the full lease,
Sorry.
addresses some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can come unmuted, yes, sorry. I did pull it up, so if you see the screen, I believe it's still being shared, but I skipped way down. This is the last third or fourth page of the whole package, but just discussing the specific topic. And I did pull up this specific addendum here. Talks about eligibility program, annual research, talks about termination, timeliness and things like that. So I did pull it up. We can review this, we can go back. I just, due to the conversation, I thought it'd be the best to pull it up, so.
What's the relevant point? I'm sorry.
It's a city
No,
of
go ahead.
Mountain affordable housing.
Yes, but,
Lucas was asking what the relevant point was for the city of Mountain View.
yeah, which provision should we be looking at?
He's
And
asking,
as far as what, I didn't really hear the prior comments, kind of hard to hear, I guess. The relevancy of which comment, which one?
So related to early termination or breaking the lease within the City of Mountain View Affordable Housing Addendum for our benefit, which point is the relevant one?
he's asking,
I think we were talking about, someone in the room was talking about the 90 days, the option to, so I brought it up regarding, it's actually highlighted here. That might have been an addition, Phil, in your guys' part, that's why it's highlighted. I don't recall, maybe it was an adjustment, but, so this is the city of Mountain View, this is related to both. So I just wanted to pull this up as we were discussing the specific tendency of whether it's a city employee and or a school district worker. So I guess it could be either, right? If a city employee transfers and works somewhere else, they would no longer be eligible, right? And have to move to as well. I guess as far as breaking a lease, I guess what we would have to do is, again, that would be a discussion, like Rebecca said, I don't know. Obviously, that would be something we could discuss. Again, at a minimum, I would say a requirement, kind of standardized would be a 30-day notice plus 1 month's rent. And that's actually, I'll tell you, a fairly easy way out. It's basically 2 months rent. So.
All right, are we ready to back up where we left off?
So I guess just a bullet point real quick, Sammy, sorry, I guess the concern overall the last few minutes is obviously if there's a change in employment, right, and or they've got to leave and they're in the middle of a lease term, I think the area to discuss further or figure out if we're allowing the lease break, et cetera, is that situation, correct? I think that's.
Yeah, so we need to come up with a fee, or if we're even going to allow it.
can we, I guess I would prefer maybe we don't allow it, or you said earlier about until we can release the apartment.
If we leave as is, that would essentially be
The only way out, right?
Yeah.
So because people are going to move regardless, so we have to take that into consideration. If someone's got a job in LA, they're moving. So we can either collect money on their moving, or we can send them ultimately to collections if they never pay us. So giving them that way out is sometimes a better way to go because we can also collect money on it.
And then using the 30-day plus 1 month's rent, theoretically, well, literally, it gives us 2 months rent. With their 30-day notice today, if I live there and I have to move out and break my lease, I have 10 months left. I give Sammy my 30-day notice plus 1 month's rent. It's essentially 2 months rent I'm handing along. For that 30-day notice to be valid, for that to start officially that day, it's when payments also received at the same time. So essentially the staff would have 60 days to collect, to get a new tenant and move somebody in before it see any loss of that unit with vacancy. So. But I do understand, Rebecca, the concern. This is not a typical site or market site or an affordable site where we have a 2-year wait list, right? Where it's could be during school season or a typical time where it's much slower. There's not a lot of teachers, for example, looking for a house, which could be a little bit tricky. But it does give us essentially 60 days to find a replacement resident for the unit without losing any revenue for that unit.
Is that something we need to figure out today? Does that need to go into the lease, or can that policy be developed?
That would be added to the lease. If we did have an early term lease break option, that would be added into the lease. If we left it as is, again, it would just be like Tammy said, I was gonna say the exact point. I'm moving to LA to use the example. I'm moving regardless, you let me out or not. I'm turning my keys, I'm moving my furniture, and I'm heading out. So regardless, I'm leaving. It's just whether we're charging a fee up front, and they could, even if let's say we do charge the 30-day notice plus a 1 month fee, and they're still gonna leave regardless. If we don't receive it, that'll just get added to the move out statement and deposition process and all that stuff as far as the move out. Security deposit funds and all that would be applied, and then they would get a balance due. So it would just be a collection at that point after they moved out to collect the monies that are owed. So, but like Sammy said, regardless if they have to move, they're gonna be moving. It's just, I guess, the ease and how we're allowing them to be let out of release. So.
And this always has to be standard. You can't do case by case.
Correct.
What creates the most financial stability for the building?
Well, the easiest and most financial stable option is definitely just kind of as is, like we were saying, or Sammy mentioned, is leaving it, not giving a lease break option. And then that they would be fine using the same scenario. I move out, I move to LA tomorrow. I paid my December's rent, it's paid in full. Let's say county doesn't find a replacement until March, I'm paying every month until that unit is reoccupied. So that's the most financially stable option for the property.
I think that's my preference.
Okay.
Because teachers shouldn't be, they shouldn't be leaving mid-year
It would
and
be
leaving a classroom.
unusual.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good point, Becky. You guys would know better. I don't know. This might be, we have 143 units. This might be, I don't know how often it happens. It probably happens, right? But probably very rarely.
Yeah, rarely.
Maybe it's more than I know, but if it's pretty rarely, I think, that would be a good option to keep.
The hard part is it does depend on when you move in, because if I move in February, my lease ends in February. If I were to make a job change, I mean, so I don't know, that is just important. It's like, ideally we would all move in at the start of the school year.
Right.
But,
Right.
like college, but,
Right.
I don't know if it's necessarily gonna go like that, especially if units open up as the year goes on, like maybe, November they move in.
Maybe we keep the lease as it is now, and then as it progresses, we kind of figure out what the ebb and flow is. I think since this is all new, I think my preference would be to lean towards stability of the building first. And then as we see like how residents are prefer to move in and out, and then when we do the lease term extension, because I remember in apartments, like you could do 6 months or you could do 12 months or 8 months. And then maybe that allows individuals that had a 1-year lease when they come to February to say, okay, I only want to go to June. We kind of see what happens, but I think my preference to start is stability of the building first,
Yeah, interesting.
and then adjust.
And then over time.
I agree. Let me say one last thing to
synchronized.
just
Right.
make it clear. It's very standard practice. If teachers decide not to live in our community and they go somewhere else next door where they are now, it's going to be the same. There's no community anywhere in the world that's going to let you off. That's why they have the city funding contracts. Otherwise, the community would be exposed and people could come and go as they please. So it's standard. So I don't think it would prevent anyone from renting an apartment or signing a lease with us, put it that way. So
I really like the idea though of once you start doing the first round of renewals, that you try to synchronize them so that they sort of expire in the summer. So that you'll get on that cadence of the school year.
The unfortunate part though with like like forcing people to do the cadence is that it is a lot of work to file for BMR housing. So it's a lot to ask for someone to do after if you just did it 6 months ago to have to do it again and be like, here's my proof of income, here's my bank account, here's this, and we already agree that it's kind of
that would
process.
so there's a handful of concerns with that, and one being I'm hearing you pretty well, but would that be essentially like a mass recertification every year? We basically be removing 143 units at the same time every single year, and that's a major underhaul and overhaul.
Okay.
We'd have lease expirations starting in India. It would be and especially now trying to lease up for the February move-ins, right? It's best, again, going back to your question earlier about stability for the property, Rebecca, it's best for the property to have a normal February movements, March movements, April movements, and being 12-month leases and expiring at different times. We typically like to keep lease expirations capped a certain number or percentage per month. So we're not having, 50, 80, or 100% of the community expiring all at the same time. That would be like us doing a lease up every single year, like we're starting now, we're gonna start soon. That would be like doing a lease up every single year.
I'm glad we have experience here and not just us naive people sort of inventing perfect solutions.
Yeah, and this is still real quick, so I mean, these are all very good questions, but we're also 45 minutes in and have barely touched on the first 7 pages of this 100 and some odd page list. So we probably should keep moving. And some of these issues will be things that are going to get fettered out. I think it's appropriate to know what the situation is now. And I think, Rebecca, you determined what it is, and that is they're signing a lease, they're committed to the lease. Until we mitigate our damage and fill with somebody else, they're obligated to continue to pay rent, even if they're going to move away. So if all of a sudden we have a waiting list of 50 employees dying to get in, then perhaps that relaxes.
Yeah.
But at the moment, these are leases that are enforceable under California law. So.
And then lastly, and the tag on that, Phil, is if we do have, as an example, a 50-person wait list and someone has to break their lease, that's a real nice conversation with Connie, her team, with the resident. Unfortunately, you see a go, but good news is I've got 50 people in line for your 2-bedroom apartment. We'll have this thing turned, made ready for the new person who moved in 7 days. They're only going to owe 6 or 7 days of rent. So that would be a very good situation. That's what we hope to get.
We're not there yet, but yes, that would
No,
be.
but that's the goal, yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel, correct.
Why don't we keep rolling through this then?
I have one question. I apologize if I missed this, but if an employee is released from employment, then the lease can be terminated. Did I miss that part?
In the addendum, it says they get a year.
Yeah, I think we were so in the addendum, it says if an employee is terminated, they get to finish out their lease term. Part of the thought process was that with this is we want to separate a little bit their employment with the district and their housing. So if a principal needs to let a teacher go, we don't want to add the layer. Am I correct?
Right, it's number 6 in that.
I guess when I was reading this, there are other reasons for failing to meet the eligibility criteria, not just employment. So I'm wondering if 6 needs to just be clarified, or there might need to be another number that just talks about release of employment as opposed to just failing to meet the eligibility criteria. When I read this, my first thought was, oh, they don't meet the income eligibility requirement. I know there's another section of that, but it's just, it may be useful to be clear in the different sections so we know what each section is talking about.
Are you referring to this affordable housing addendum as
Yeah,
far as program eligibility and
sounds like,
recertification? Or-
Take a look at number 3 also.
yeah, number 3, there, yes, it looks like we're talking about that addendum. And then for the occupancy priority, I also had a question in terms of what it means for the resident agrees to vacate if the unit is required to accommodate a school district employee. And I just had is that if a unit that is allocated to the school district went into the waterfall and it's a waterfall resident, is that the situation? If so, I'm wondering if that can just be clarified. Because the occupancy priority seems like a very broad description of this, and it's not necessarily related to the waterfall.
Yeah,
This has nothing to do with waterfall, I don't think, right?
So then I'm probably maybe not fully processing in the second sentence where it says, in the event that the unit is required to accommodate a school district employee, the resident, and it sounds like the resident is all tenant lessees. So I'm just trying to make sense of.
yeah, wait, I think he is right. So I think this is regarding if we have 123 units for school district units, and we fill them all up, but let's say there's 5 left over. 5 of the units go, and city employees, they're next, right? Or whoever's next on the waterfall takes these units. Then we have someone come in that's wanting from the school district. This is that verbiage, correct? That they have,
Okay.
right? That's this number 3 I think he's referring to here.
Yes,
They'll essentially get to finish out their term plus 1 year.
right.
That way the city and, the school district employee that wants to move into that unit will then have that once that timeframe expires. Wayne, is that what you're asking, I believe? Or
Yeah.
confirming?
Yeah, if that's intent, it may be useful just to clarify, you know, for a district unit that's occupied by a non-district staff, that's what this section is about, but it wasn't totally clear when I was reading who it applied to and when.
So if you said something like, in the event the unit is occupied by a Mount Webster district resident, comma, and then leave the rest the
Right,
same.
right, in a unit that's allocated to the school district.
Oh, in a unit, yeah.
It was my understanding that if it's a district employee who perhaps needed to stay on or something after, let's say they lose eligibility, we give them an extra term. But if somebody is not a district employee and a district employee needs or is available for that unit, that the resident in this context wasn't going to get an additional year, but got to finish out their term.
I thought we said they could get an additional year because we are hoping to lease things up.
Well, Phil, how it's
Did I
written, it
miss
says
that?
how it's written.
Yeah, I know, I'm looking at the highlight now, maybe that's the reason it's
Following
highlighted.
the expiration of the lease term, let's say I'm 10 months into my 12-month lease. Phil, teacher comes in, you need my unit, so I get 2 more months to fulfill my initial lease plus 1 more year. That's how this reads.
I thought that was our intent because we were trying to fill it up and thinking a lot of people might not go in if they knew they could get kicked out within a year.
Right.
I thought that's what we
Yeah.
talked about last time.
I
So we said we'd give them a little more and then hope there'd be some more natural turnover so that we'd have more units available for the teachers. But Rebecca, you're questioning.
Yeah, I was trying to think about the board meeting as well, where Devin had asked that they not be extended the 2. So I think, yes, I think that's correct. I was just thinking.
I
I
have
think
to
that's
read this.
something that would be important for us to note too, because I'm not sure. We don't really know like the numbers yet. And so I think it makes sense to grant like the year period as we start out because we want to fill it. We want to have people there. But then maybe as things change, be like, okay, well, maybe it's full and bustling. And so we no longer need a year grace period. But I think that is from what, just to speak from the people on the ground, that is a hesitancy. Is like, what if we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what the BMR like numbers are going to be yet. It does create concern. So that 1 year of extending the lease would be gracious.
Well,
But
yeah,
that
and this one
extension is
seems,
for non-district employees.
right, so
So
this,
this,
I thought we also talked about
We
for
discussed
district
about
employees
for-
too.
we did,
Yes.
and we said there would be an additional year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Just making sure that was in
So
here.
it's sort of a parallel provision.
Yes.
Is there a fair housing concern if we treat different residents differently with this provision?
No, Panit said, we did question that on a call we have for our legal counsel, and she said, no, not with this and not this addendum with this property. There's other properties she has, with similar structures.
Okay, good to know.
It does seem like some clarification between sections 3 and 6 may require some parsing out. Again, just to clarify if it's about the waterfall, and for 6, maybe making a clarification between like release of employment versus other eligibility criteria. Because if it's about income eligibility, there was that 1 year provision, but if it's about release of employment, it sounds like it's a different thing, right? And then I was just thinking, will the City of Mountain View employees also be seeing this addendum? If so, then it may be a little confusing. If a city employee is occupying a city allocated unit, then they're not really subject to paragraph 3. So, if the same information is for all staff, including city staff, it may be confusing for city staff as well. So, if there's a provision that is specifying that this is really about the city, about the district's allocation of units, I think that would clarify. Because it could be that a city employee is is in the waterfall in one of the district units, and then in that case it would apply, but it wouldn't apply in the city output.
Right, but 6 months.
It's 6 months. 6 months.
Does it make sense to have a separate addendum depending on the type of resident? It's sort of parallel so that you get the right one for each.
And maybe this one is for the district allocated units, and then maybe there's a parallel that's for the city allocated units that is very similar but modified to just reflect like which unit it is.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and that's something we asked initially way early on in this process, and it was actually suggested that we have one combined. But that's something we could bring back up potentially if that's something that's wanting to be considered or looked at.
I think it's just a question of administration,
It
just to be
just
clear,
needs
it
to be
needs to be
clear.
clearer here if it's single,
Yeah.
that there's no reason not to, but.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be just one.
And one thing I want
document,
to add, so you got to remember, we're
Right.
looking at this, with a microscope. And when this is, so if someone moves in, Connie assists in the team that will move people in. This is all discussed and talked to as well. I know you know, but just to remind you, they're not getting this packet, signing it, handing it in the next day or something. This is going to be clearly walked through and talked about. Like number 3, I do see, to be very specific, number 3 is discussing the priority, which is in reference to the waterfall course, and number 1 being the school district, right? So it's referencing that. So it would,
Or the city.
again, I would communicate if I was a property manager and I was moving somebody in and they were in a unit, or if they were in a city unit, I would explain to them verbally while they're signing this and looking at this addendum how it works, all this reads. If they were in a city employee in a school district unit, I would explain to this and make this very clear. Hey, you're in a designated school district unit. This is the term, this is how it works. So that's all I'm just reminding, I get we could add, again, this is discussing the priority for the school district employee. So I understand it, I get the confusion. We could simply add maybe priority for occupancy Mountain View has been 7, should be granted to employees of the school district for the designated school district units or of the 120, like something like that. Is that what you're looking to add here? To
Yes,
specify that it's specific to those units?
yes.
Okay. That's simple. I mean, would that suffice, Wayne and team, or are you looking for a little more, or?
I think that would definitely help. And then in the second sentence, it might be in the event that the unit is occupied by a non-school district employee and the unit is required to accommodate a school district employee. So it might just be adding a few words in the event that the unit is, and then adding the words occupied by a non-school district employee. That can help bridge the gap.
But do you want parallel language for city units and city employees?
Derek, can I suggest that maybe we can add an addendum for those particular units only? Because it's not gonna happen too often, I don't think. So an addendum to add for that 1 or 2 units that are occupied by a city employee that's normally for a school district employee. So an addendum, instead of changing a lease, adding something to a lease, addendum specifically for that reason.
Potentially, I know again, the discussion earlier, we were gonna break this up between the scenarios, the type of units. And Pudi highly suggested we have it all inclusive as one, so it's streamlined across the board and all in one addendum, but that is something we could, like a supplemental addendum that'd be added in addition to this, if a city employee moves into a school district designated unit, for example, they would have another addendum that they would have to sign off on.
Maybe,
That's potential, that's something we could bring up, but again, it's, the goal of this addendum was to incorporate all of those scenarios, right, all in one sheet.
So what you could do would be to have different
yeah.
boxes to check under that section. A, for city employee, B, for school, and just like these other ones, we've got boxes, if this box is checked, just check the box that applies
yeah,
in that case. That might make it easier.
Right, it could be a 3A
Yeah.
and a 3B, it's all in one place, it's just
yes.
it's just specified for those units and it's in one place. That's one.
Do you want something like that for the city, or do you not even want to have
I
something?
think it would probably be the case where if there's a city designated unit and it does go in the waterfall, it'd probably be the same interest of having that as well.
Okay.
So,
The likelihood of city designated units going to waterfall, I think is smaller because there's only 20,
right,
whatever, 2 of them.
Yeah.
But still.
You never can do that. 3A, 3B.
right.
Okay. could say something like this section is only applicable to Mountain View or some school district
Yes.
units.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
3B, this section is only applicable
Yeah,
to
yes,
the city
exactly,
units. And then
exactly.
they pick each
Exactly.
other and then that's it.
Yes.
And
You're the
that's-
lawyer.
Yes, yes.
Instead of having multiple
Yes.
addendums.
Yes.
Yes.
It just needs to be clear.
No worries. We can even put it in bold and.
Perfect, even better.
Would that be the same way to handle
We're signing
section,
this.
section 6?
Tell me about it.
Yeah,
It might be like, eligibility could be employment, and the other one would be, and the other major one is the income eligibility piece, so.
I think the income eligibility piece is addressed in like number 2, where it discusses program eligibility. And we can fine tune number 6 to just talk about termination of employment.
That would make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Chris, can you go ahead, do you want to edit this on your Word doc version and send that I can
Yeah.
loop it in? We need just to double check. That would be, is that cool? Okay,
Yeah, I'm taking notes on the.
beautiful, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why you're here, huh? Other than to enjoy our company. So, back to pages.
Sorry, did you want,
Oh, I thought it was second.
did
Page
you want
five.
6A, 6B? Is
On
that
page
what you're
3.
talking about?
You know, there's-
I hope so.
I thought we were on that one.
Yeah.
I think it's
Pace
7.
and so, you know, the 90 days were.
We don't tell me to read about that.
So I'm totally lost. Where are we in the document? We skipped all the way to page 61 now.
I do have a hard stop, but I just want, Sammy's here too, but I personally have a hard stop.
I think a lot of the rest of this is gonna go really quickly personally.
Yeah, I
What if we
understand
try
your
to say,
concern.
like,
If
look,
not-
what things do you have questions on, as opposed to going over page by page? Because since there's so many pages, I don't think we would make it. So is there any point
100%.
when there's a
That was the
question?
goal of trying to get ahead of, yeah, I mean, yeah, it would take a couple hours to go through this. Yeah, at least, probably 3 hours, yeah.
I have a couple, I mean, I don't need to.
Go for it.
Go ahead,
Okay,
go ahead.
I think paragraph 20 talked about outdoor cooking, you couldn't have any outdoor cooking grills on your balcony. Did we have an outdoor cooking area somewhere that people can use? Okay,
Yes,
Yes.
so there's.
yeah, there's a really nice kind of corner off that area. We have the food set up inside and the outdoor ribbon cutting. Kind of around the corner there, there's 2 or 3 really nice built-in grills.
I didn't pay enough attention.
With an island
Yeah,
of
there's
counters, and it's really nice, yeah.
There was also a clubhouse agreement, and I was wondering, I wasn't sure when that was applicable. Is that just like a standard thing so that you know about our little community room, or is that if you were trying to rent it for like a private party or something like that? Like what's that for? It was on.
Yeah, so that was more for the shared cooking kitchen area.
Okay,
If anybody wanted to use that for like a party, a birthday party or something like that. We don't have to charge for it if we don't want to, but this protects us. It also shows like that we require insurance, yeah, so this would be strictly for that.
so would
So
you sign it each
Just
time?
simply answer yes to both your point/question. It's kind of a general, hey, we have a clubhouse. Also, it is we do have an option if someone wanted to rent out for a private party event, teacher dinner, I don't know. But that is, and this would be something that would be completed and have the various terms and deposit amounts and stuff in there, should they want to reserve it.
So everybody will sign this with their lease, and then if they want to reserve it, they come back and you have another little like reservation
Yeah.
form. Okay,
That's correct.
Got it.
Yeah, they're kind of signing off as part of the lease, understanding, agreeing to it, seeing this, and then should they have a specific, July 1st, 5 PM, I want to reserve it, then they would come back in and have a specific, correct, yeah.
And the intent is to have it for the tenants. This isn't open to the public to come and rent it from us. So it's intended for the occupants.
All
right.
Only for the residents of the community.
Correct.
But just to reserve it so that you don't have like 4 birthday parties going on at the same time or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there were some community, I think it's the next page, community policies, rules and regulations. I'm just curious, are those the same one as for the 7s? Are they using the same for the market rate units?
Which one was it?
It's.
No,
it was-
I can answer Sammy. She was just
Okay.
generally asking, We don't know, we'd have to see their release. She was asking if the market sites have the same rules as we do. I could probably say yes and say yes, or the majority of it is, because this is an AA lease, which is probably what they use as well. They may have other additional items, or additional rules and things added to their lease, and vice versa. We may have some that they don't have. But yeah, it's a completely different agreement, addendums and everything. So.
The reason for the question was it talks about the pool and the fitness center. And I think some of those amenities are gonna be located over in that other area. And so I was just concerned about having conflicting rules, that's all.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It is a good point, but the majority of these rules are like very basic and generic, like no trash, no running, no pets, no glass, right? And then it says like pool hours are posted at the pool. So that will all be like accurate information. So I think for the most part, this wouldn't conflict with anything that's posted at the amenities.
Does anybody else have? So
it's very standard.
Yes.
Yeah, no, these things standard.
Have posted number of occupants, the hours, et cetera, would be posted there at the pool area. But no, it is a very good point. So kind of on that, as we discussed in the, maybe it was yesterday, but a couple of the meetings, we have requested as far as we as a win, have requested with the Gray Star standing. I don't think we've received it yet. It could be buried in my email, but we did request a detailed specific list of all the amenities at the communities that our residents would have access to, as well as kind of details, layouts, drawings, rules, things like that. We have asked for that. We just have not received it from them yet, so.
Yeah, come up a couple of times. You're right, Derek. I know you thought Gray Star Ford. Ping him again if you haven't got it, because it's going to become. We're going to continue to get the questions till we get all the answers.
Yeah, and frankly, it's a big part of what Connie's doing now, and obviously even part of the renting and leasing process. To say, hey, we have a pool, we have a gym, a yoga studio, a bar, all these various things are going to be very important as part of that process, right? So they know what amenities we have. Then of course the latter, is what that looks like, hours, rules, things like that too. So let's do I don't know, maybe Sammy, you can try from your side. Now I know I have followed up a couple times. Maybe you can give it a step.
There's
Reply
also
to my last email and check in on that.
Sure, no problem.
there's a short-term subletting or rental addendum. I thought we were not going to be allowing short-term subletting.
No,
That's what that is. It's stating that it's not allowed.
that's not allowed yet.
Oh, maybe I read it too quickly.
Yeah,
Okay.
subleasing's not allowed at any of our
Perfect,
sites.
perfect. There was something about an intrusion alarm. Does every unit have one of those? What's the intrusion
No,
alarm?
so that's can you go to that one, Derek? The
Which one is it? The alarm?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one just states that they are allowed, the residents are allowed to have them, they're not built in. Nor are they, if the resident chooses to get one, nor are they covered
Let me
under
find the
like
right, sorry guys.
no, that's okay. They wouldn't be able to put in like a work order, we're not responsible for maintaining them. So that's pretty much what that is.
Yeah. And then obviously we would have to have access, so we always have access to units, right, for any emergencies, things like that. Similar to if we were not some residents, we give them keys and everything, they'll put their own lock, or maybe want to put a smart lock system on or something and don't tell us. So obviously we wouldn't have any kind of access codes or keys, et cetera. So we have access in case of an emergency to any apartment.
Okay, and if it's going off like crazy and you're not home and it's driving everybody nuts, you'll have the ability to turn it off.
Yes, exactly.
Good.
Yep.
And then there was something on packages, and there's a limit on number of days that packages could be left. I was wondering, is there a generic response that goes in the blank for the packages?
Yeah, so typically it's 14 days, just so that way it doesn't take up space within the locker. The office will not accept packages, they'll have to be put into the locker. So typically there's no issue with that.
Okay.
People order a package and they want it right away, so.
And then there was a parking addendum. Are we charging separately for parking? I thought every unit got one space, but I may be confused about that.
Everyone does get one space. That's something we can confirm, Sammy, but as far as we've been told and communicated to you, everyone will get one reserved parking space per apartment. And there's no additional charge.
Okay.
That hasn't been discussed, so it's that's again something we can discuss, but it's included, one reserved space is included with the apartment.
This just addresses more like that they have to keep it clean, register,
Yes.
license.
They have that
plate
registered
number.
tag, so they'll do, the staff will do on-site walks. I just did one on a few sites today, but they're not abandoned, left, broken down. They have to have current registration, et cetera, all those things. So it kind of, walks them through that.
Okay, it's just there was a cost for parking fee, it's blank.
Yeah, that would be zero.
Yeah, so we can put 0 in there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So kind of a little quick insight. So when Connie, again, is going in and doing the apartment number 1, or let's say 125 lease term, this is in a program called Blue Moon. It's a software database connected to our property management software. And so all these various areas and where you see blanks and things like that, there's kind of fill-in boxes on the backside that they go through and fill these out. So we have the ability, right, to put $0 or include it and add in some of these things or put NA. Some of these things may be even NA. Again, this is a very generalized kind of across the board lease agreement. But those boxes that she'll fill out are specific to the specific community and what we decided to charge or terms, et cetera, that she and her team will fill out specific to every unit of the property. So.
Those are all of my questions.
I had a few questions about utilities, and some of these I think you answered when we talked about rugs in the previous meeting. But if you could very quickly walk us through the utility and services addendum and let us know which are flat fees or which ones you would use rugs, and how we could provide some at least assurance to the tenants that they're not going to see pretty significant changes in their utility payments over time.
So I don't think we came up with a formula yet, right? That hasn't been fully agreed on. But typically what we do is on this sheet, it's formula 5, which is allocation based on the number of persons residing in the unit.
Right here.
So all of these would be filled in where it says, where formula, and then it has an empty space, we would put 5 in there. Unless it was like a third-party billing company for folks like for their cable and all the ones that they're responsible to maintain on their own.
Electric and gas would be an example. Those are directly
Yeah.
billed by their usage for their unit. That's not like a property-wide split formula calculation done. They're going to be billed for their gas or electric. And is this, I don't know, I asked this, is this the property that's individually water metered, Sammy, or no?
No.
Not this side, right? That's awesome. Okay. So for an example, real quickly, so this, let's say it'd be calculation number 5. So I have it here. It's probably small, but this is when I was discussing earlier about calculations and methods here, there's a bunch you can see. One is typically 5 is what we do. So if the water bill for the property, I'm throwing out numbers, $10,000, there's 143 occupied units. There's a calculation that's done. It backs out what's called, you'll see CAD in here. That's referred to as common area deduction. Typically is 10%, maybe 20%. Sammy can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of determined too with us and the client on what that absorption rate is going to be. But that covers, right, the irrigation around for the sprinklers in the property, things like that. So it takes into account, obviously there is property costs or charges that are assessed to that total of 10,000. Once that's done, it takes the remaining, let's say it's 20%, simple math, it's 8,000 left. That 8,000 gets broken out and calculated to a cost per occupant. So if in a studio or 1 bedroom, there's 1 person and it's $85.23 per occupant, that unit, that person in those units would pay $85.23. If they're in a 2 bedroom and there's 3, they would pay $255, give or take, whatever that math is, 3 times that. So it's a cost per occupant. And that is typically probably 9 out of 10 properties we have, that's the option that's selected. It's the truest and most fair, kind of equitable way to charge and bill everybody. And that's typically for water, sewer, and trash.
I think sewer and trash are probably your best examples. These might be sub-metered if I remember that.
They are sub-metered.
The water is, yes.
Yeah, but stormwater, trash.
Oh, good. It
Thought
is.
there was a third, but maybe not. But so of all these things that I'm looking at right here on my screen and the page previous, it might just be stormwater and trash. I thought there was a third, but I'm just not remembering right now what it might be. Well, maybe it was sewer, but only that's run different than stormwater. And there is no gas.
It is different.
Yeah, perfect. So this is summated. So that's great. So that's really good news. So the majority
Majority
of
are
people
storm and trash, and I think everything else is individual.
Yep, that sounds right. Yep.
Good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions?
If residents sign up to use the Mountain View Wisman internet service, it's free. There's no cost to the tenants, is that correct? Or is there a cost to the tenant?
Are you referring to the internet? It's really hard to hear, but I think the
Yes,
internet.
the internet, yeah. Is there a cost
That's
for that?
the $10 charge.
$10?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
But they can opt out and get their own.
okay.
Correct.
Okay. I want to make sure that, one, I don't want to skip ahead too much if there's more questions. Okay. I want to schedule our next date. We had discussed that this is our last big one before we actually start leasing. So the next time we'd want to check in would probably be in February sometime to kind of get an update on how leasing is going, and things of that nature. So looking at the calendar, I think early February would be too early, so that's the week of February 3rd. February 10th, the week of February 10th still seems too early. The week of February 17th, school district is off, so probably not a good week. That puts us into the week of February 24th. Suggestion for February 27th. Okay. We have been meeting at 5:30. Is okay. I can't remember if I asked this meeting or another meeting. Is 5 okay?
5's tough, just getting from work.
Okay. So 5:30 on the 27th is our next meeting.
It's Thursday, the 27th.
Yes.
That's when the school board meeting again?
No.
Yeah.
Which we don't need to worry about anymore.
But thank you for asking. Okay. So we have our meeting date set, and then that leaves adjourned.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
We do. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Who is the second?
Thank you, everybody.
Lucas.
Oh, yes.
I just voted yes.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have fun
guys.
at the CSB
Bye.
conference.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Connie, a
Bye,
question.
Bill.
Oh, good
Bye.
times.
Connie.
Oh, Connie.
Connie, are you still there?
Connie.
Oh, no.
Yes,
well,
she is. Connie.
Connie?
Oh,
Oh. I guess my question, I just shouted out to the room. So they said we were gonna receive application emails on Friday, the 22nd. My friends and coworkers have not yet received an email about applications. Is that expected?
So we just talked with Wynn about that today.
Okay.
It wasn't that everyone would get an email on the 22nd. What they're
Okay.
doing is they're going through the interest list in the order of people submitted their interest forms and getting
Okay.
back to them.
I submitted like within a few hours. That's why I was kind of like,
So she's like,
I was kind of like, oh, where is it? Where is it? And then I did get the email. I was like,
Yes, but you're also welcome to contact Connie.
Okay,
You
cool.
want me to send you her?
yes, please.
Okay,
I would love that.
Yeah, they're working on it. They had a couple of things to get set up in the office, but
Okay.
she's on
That's what I figured. I was still, I've
should
been
be at the top of
rocking
the
back
list
and
if you're
forth.
interested.
I understand.
Shelley, would you know if they're contacting city staff as well? Or are we in charge of doing that and handing it
Yeah,
over?
That was
I think we just need, we need your list,
Okay,
because then we'll just set up the places for them to come in.
okay, so would we need an updated interest list from folks who signed up from your portal? Because we may want to make sure we have that list.
Was the city collecting?
We haven't, we let our city staff know that there is an interest list. I think it was the suggestion to just have everyone go through that sign up list on the school district website. So
Oh, interesting.
we haven't set up our own list, but what we can do is maybe there's some handoff here now. We can take that list and we can just set up our own thing.
That's, yeah,
Okay.
because that was my understanding was that you guys would vet the list and check for, did I get that right? Check for qualification and then bring it back to Wayne.
I think we've just sort of recently confirmed that, but
Okay.
at the outset, maybe a few weeks ago, that wasn't established yet. And so we can maybe coordinate with you.
Yeah,
offline
let's do it.
about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca, did you know where?